So welcome everybody. I'm in New Zealand. I haven't been up very long, which is why I'm last on the list today. Otherwise it would have been the middle of the night. So what I want to talk about today is just my understanding perspective of humans and viruses, which will be very different probably from a purely scientific approach. And what can we learn? And just a disclaimer, as was already said in the introduction, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a natural health professional trained in a different approach to healthcare from what I call mainstream medicine. And by the way, I think that everything is needed and we need to blend what I call the mainstream approach and the natural health approach, because everything has something to offer. And really what I want to focus on in this short presentation is two questions. Why do viruses manifest in the human body? And do they have a message and a lesson for humanity? Do they have a lesson for us individually, but also collectively? And I always like to share this quote well, not always, but often in my presentations, because it's very valid. All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as being self-evident. And what this really means is that often we can be offered an opinion or a piece of information that doesn't really make sense to us, and we completely disagree with it initially. And then later down the track, we actually find that it's true. And this is just the way the human psyche works. As our consciousness shifts and as we get more facts given to us, then what we initially thought was untrue turns out actually to be true. So why do viruses manifest in the human body? And I want to talk from the perspective of working with many clients over many years, and also myself as my initial guinea pig, in trying to understand why is it that, for example, for a client, why is it that I'm sick and I can't get well? And often people with things like chronic fatigue and ME and fibromyalgia and the list of conditions that were previously read out, usually what happens is people get sick with some sort of flu-like or virus-like, or it is a virus illness, and then the common thing is that they don't seem to be able to recover. For example, what happened to me was I came down with a very, very severe virus. I went to the doctor. He said, well, there's nothing we can do. It's a virus. I can't really give you anything. You just have to, take your time and rest, and then you'll get better. And a month after that, nothing had really changed, and I was just absolutely exhausted, and I couldn't go back to work. And I remember my boss ringing me and saying, well, if you don't come back, then I'm going to have to let you go. And then, because I didn't want to lose my job, I went back to work, but I struggled every day. I just slept myself in the door and was just absolutely exhausted. And finally, after about 9 months of doing that, I just walked in the door one day and quit without premeditating that. It was just like, I can't continue to do this. And what I want to show in this presentation is that the virus is actually not the cause of the symptoms, and how this plays out in the bigger picture of what is going on today. So I've got a little chart here which I've tried to reveal bit by bit, but it was a little tricky. But this gold line here is a timeline of time. And if you see here where there's a cross, this is where the virus actually sets in, and the person gets the symptoms, the fever, the sore throat, whatever the symptoms are, when we're laid up in bed. I remember for me, I had an excruciating sore throat and a high fever. Those were some of the symptoms that I had at that point of the virus sort of taking me down, so to speak. And as you're going to see, and it will make more sense in a minute when more of this chart is revealed, this is the time when what we call an opportunistic virus or infection takes hold, after which symptoms worsen dramatically And this actually turns out to be what we call the last straw effect of the virus. And people erroneously believe that this is the cause of the symptoms because it's after this point that people have most of their symptoms, that, you know, the fatigue, the exhaustion, they can't get better. And bear in mind long haul COVID here as I'm talking about this. And then for some people, you know, the immune system will stay low and they just don't seem to ever get better. But for others, they never get sick and they get better, but they're actually sort of stuck in a stress response at that point as well. I won't go into that now, but I just want to show you what happens leading up to this virus taking hold, which is often what is missed. It's usually what is missed, and this is what takes most people a long time to understand, and they don't usually understand it until somebody who understands it explains it to them. So at a previous point in time, before the virus takes hold, the immune system starts to overwork as a result of ongoing pressure and stress. And in particular, the hypothalamus goes into overdrive, the body going into stress. And even before that, actually, the real start of the problem is way back here on the timeline. This is where everything starts, the stressful life events, unresolved emotional traumas, which occur months and years, more likely years than months, before the virus and the final crash, which is over here. So what I found in every single client that I've worked with, I'm still waiting for an exception, but I haven't come across one yet, is that when people come to me, by the time they come to me, that they're sick, they've been sick for a long time, they usually say, yes, I had a virus and then I couldn't get well. I've been exhausted ever since. My life has been different ever since. I've just, you know, I can't do this and I can't do that. But when we track back in their life, and usually this will go back into childhood, and I found that actually everything starts in the first 7 years of life. If we track back, we find that there were stressful things that happened in childhood, emotional traumas, physical traumas of various kinds, which then were not resolved, were not healed, which led them to create certain unconscious beliefs, which then drove them to create various behaviors and lifestyle habits where they're pushing themselves too hard and exhausting themselves. Now, the body is not designed to be driven and to be exhausted indefinitely. We have incredible resilience, but our body can only be resilient for so long, and then it will just crash. And one of the interesting things about the virus is that it's actually our friend. It's actually taking us out, so to speak, taking the body down so that it has to rest because it can't continue to be driven as we've been driving it. Literally like a car that we're driving up the road or driving down the motorway. We're in, you know, second gear doing 100 kilometers an hour. We haven't put any oil in our car for a long time. We haven't put any water in our car for a long time. We haven't serviced it for a long time. And it's just exhausted and it's going to break down. So the body is incredibly intelligent. It's always doing whatever it can to keep us healthy and to keep us alive. And so it goes, okay, well, my owner cannot continue to operate like this. So I'm going to take my owner out. I'm going to open myself up for a virus. And this is what we call the opportunistic virus. So when we look at the bigger picture, we get in our helicopter and we go up and we look at this bigger picture of our lifeline and our timeline, we see that actually there was a reason for this virus coming in, and it's here to teach us a lesson. And so if we ask ourselves, you know, when we're healing from these virus conditions, well, what is the lesson from the virus? It's very clear. You were causing harm to yourself for a significant period of time before the virus sets in. And in one of the systems that I study, we call it breaking the laws of health. There are laws of health that we need to follow in order to stay healthy. And if we break those laws, then there are going to be consequences, just like if we break the law and we get sent to jail, there are consequences. So you were causing harm to yourself for a significant period of time before the virus set in. The virus came to wake you up and to get you to change and to create healthier life habits, lifestyle habits, and also to heal. There's usually healing that needs to be done. There's work to be done. And when people do this, when they start treating themselves better, they increase their self-care, they stop pushing themselves, they look at, the root cause of why they're not caring for themselves, and they make adjustments. And basically, in one word, really, if we were to summarize everything, all the changes, it's really about self-care and self-love. As people start to make these changes, the body naturally starts to heal itself, because it's a self-healing machine. It only sends symptoms when it needs to, when we've broken these laws of health. And so people get well, and this is how it should be. So let's look at this in the context of what is happening for humanity at the moment. Do viruses have a message for humanity collectively? Could there be a collective lesson? And what was really interesting was when the pandemic was announced in New Zealand anyway, it was about March 2020. And as soon as it came on the news, immediately I thought, whoa, this is a collective version of what has been happening individually to people for years. So there are literally millions of people around the world with chronic fatigue syndrome, for example. Millions, not just hundreds of thousands. Millions of people still sick with, or have been sick for years with, chronic fatigue syndrome. And every year they have a day called Millions Missing, where people with chronic fatigue put a pair of shoes for all the people whose lives are missing because of these chronic fatigue and pain conditions, and they call it Millions Missing Day. So millions of people for years now have been sick with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, all these other viruses that we named before, because they haven't got to the root cause yet. They haven't understood what's really causing the problem. So what I saw when the pandemic was announced was, wow, this is a collective version of what's been happening for people individually. There's a reason here for this. This is not an accident. Just like the body never creates symptoms by accident, this pandemic is not an accident. It's not happening for no reason. And this is what people have to understand, and a lot of people just still don't. They don't see this bigger picture. And if we ask ourselves, well, what is the collective lesson? Well, it's because we've been causing harm to ourselves collectively, but also to nature and to the planet for a significant period of time. And the virus is here to wake us up and to get us to change and to create a healthier world. It's just a collective version of what has been happening individually. And if we ask ourselves, well, what is this harm that we've been causing to the planet? Well, we've been plundering the planet. We have greed and we have ignorance, and we just take what we want from nature, and we're cruel to animals, and we're actually cruel to ourselves. We are not kind, we are not respectful. And in the previous presentation, which was lovely, about Namaste Care, what struck me was, yes, this is wonderful that we have this new, more humane care, but isn't it amazing that we actually have to learn how to do that when we should be doing it naturally? It should be automatic. We're not designed to be cruel and to be unkind. So as a collective, we have been very ignorant. We have been breaking what are called the laws of health, but also the laws of life and the laws of the universe, because there are laws in, and one of the laws is the law of cause and effect. And humans are very unaware of these laws. So we're being prodded to wake up. And actually, this weekend, I'm launching a whole summit on awakening, which is all about awakening consciousness, the Global Awaken Summit, because it's time for humanity to wake up and understand we need to do things differently. We need to take care of ourselves, and we need to take care of others, and we need to take care of the planet, and we need to change our values. There is so much change, and one of the things with change often is that we have to break down to break through. It's not pleasant. It's really not a pleasant experience, but this is what has to happen. And interestingly enough, when I was in my 20s, I had a breakdown, which at the time was classified as a mental breakdown and classified as something very negative. And I didn't understand what it was at the time, but in retrospect, it actually was a transformation of consciousness. It was an awakening of sorts, and I was a completely different person after that experience. So the breakdown was actually a breakthrough. But the point I'm wanting to make here is that at the time it was very, very unpleasant, and it was a complete breakdown of my mental apparatus, so to speak. And it was very scary, very uncomfortable, because I didn't understand what was happening. And the metaphor that I gave it at the time, and I still do, was that if you want to build a new building on the site where there's an old skyscraper, first of all, you have to knock the skyscraper down. And that causes a big mess. There's a lot of rubble. And for quite some time, there'll just be a gaping hole in the ground and rubble and mess. And then one day you're driving past and you see this brand new skyscraper, that's taken its place. And this is what happens with change, is that there's a breakdown, which is very messy, and then something new is built. So this is what is being asked of us right now. We're being asked to build something new. And the thing is, the lesson is not quite being got yet. My teacher, one of my teachers, who is a very, very wise, literally enlightened person, in March 2020, we had an online training, and he said, he was talking about, the virus situation, the pandemic, and he said, this is a lesson for humanity. And then a year later, we had another training, and he said, has humanity got the lesson? And he said, not yet. But he said, the thing is, the universe is infinitely kind. It has unconditional love, and it will just keep bringing the lessons until we get it. So I really hope that the lessons don't get harder, and I really hope that humanity starts to get the lesson. So that's really the nuts and bolts of what I wanted to share today. I hope that it makes sense, and maybe it might have triggered some new thoughts, remembering that all truth passes through 3 phases, that quote at the start of the presentation.